You are listening to the Mom to Mom podcast, hosted by Stephanie Sinclair, founder and owner of How to Mom. This podcast is meant to empower women and bring the community together through storytelling and education. During these episodes, you will hear stories of triumph, heartache, and hope. You will hear time-tested tips and tricks shared by mamas and women. You will hear a variety of birth stories that will resonate with all birthing families, advice from professionals who have dedicated their teachings to pregnancy, birth, and moms. Here, you will find encouragement, support, and community, because we are your community, and we are so happy to have you. Now, on to today's episode. Hi, you guys. Thank you so much for tuning in to today's episode. We are interviewing a professional today. As you know, on this podcast, every other week we share birth stories. And then on the other weeks, we share interviews with some really incredible professionals, really across the country. They don't necessarily have to be local. Any type of resource or professional that I feel like would be helpful to you in pregnancy, birth, postpartum, or just motherhood in general, I want to bring to this platform. So I'm really excited to introduce you to today's guest. I feel like this will probably, I'm just going to put this out here. I think this might be, aside from our birth stories, because those are pretty popular, this might be the most popular podcast interview coming your way, because it is on a topic that is pivotal in parenting. It is the bedrock of our existence in parenting. I had the story or the question to ask our professional today, the background on her company name, but I don't think I need to. I am so excited, you guys, to introduce you to sleep consultant Stephanie Fisher. I love when you pull up her website, right away it states, because good sleep is the bedrock of happy, healthy families. Like, can I get an amen? Yes. She gives relatable, educational, and supportive sleep coaching for restful nights and joyful parenting. Oh my goodness, you guys. I have so many questions for Stephanie today. I'm so excited to learn about this passion of hers, how she helps parents. What I think is really cool, we obviously share a name. I don't know about you. I never really liked my name, but it grows on me. So it won't be confusing today. We're just both Stephanie. But also, Stephanie is a wife and a mom of 3, you guys, and we have a similar story in that we both have a older singleton, and then we have twins. Stephanie has twins as well. And so we have a lot in common. We tend to really enjoy each other's reels and commentary on what it's like to be a mom of 3, including twins. So welcome, Steph. Thank you so much for being here today. I cannot wait to get into things, but I want you first to just take a moment to say hi to our listeners and give any other information you feel like would be appropriate in your intro.
Okay, thank you. I feel like I already have so many comments just from your intro. You made me feel good about the copy on my homepage because that was self-made.
Mic drop.
Yeah. And yeah, I also do not like my name. I was always mad at my mom.
It's not kid-like, and it's also not professional. Like, there's no...
It's very like 90s baby, but that's okay. But yeah, so we have
another episode
in common, more than just our name, but the multiples thing and the older child, like we were talking about before this, just huge commonalities. But yeah, so I'm a mom of 3. I use the term twin mom of 3, but I feel like that sounds confusing.
Like I struggled with that too. So I say mom of 3, including twins. I don't know. I think it's one and the same, but it's hard. Yeah.
Twin mom of 3. I'm like, triplets? No, twins. Yeah. So I am a mom of 3, including twins. Yes, I'm married, live in Mankato, Minnesota, and I've been doing this for almost 2 years now. I was on my maternity leave with my twins is when I got certified. And I quit my job on my second day back from maternity leave. And it was just like one of those, like, I just knew after like 15 almost years in the fitness industry, I just like completely pivoted and switched careers. And it was like one of those things where it was like a hell yes in my body. Like, this is what I need to do. I just knew that this was the right thing to do. So I totally switched careers.
Love it.
But there's a lot of things that feel similar actually to what I used to do.
Yeah.
It's not fitness, but helping people and improve the quality of their lives. I just do it differently now. So yeah.
I love that. And we also have that in common. So my background is in the legal field, and our listeners probably already know that, but everything in my body for this passion of mine was screaming hell yes. And then my brain and everybody outside of my body was like, what are you doing? And there's moments where it's really scary. It's definitely not any easier being an entrepreneur. However, it's so amazing when you can love what you do. You also are able to, I feel like, prioritize things in my home life a little bit better and differently, not having to be gone 60 plus hours a week. But I'm just so proud of you for making that jump, because it's really, really scary. But when a passion has been put on your heart, I think a lot of people overlook that. And I'm really glad that you did not. And I also can really relate and just see the blood, sweat, and tears behind a website and a tagline. All of that, I don't think people realize, is a lot of work, and you're really putting yourself out there, and you hope and pray that it lands and that people get it. I'm very impressed. I think it's so captivating right there, just through that tagline, because sleep is so important. And I want everybody to know that's listening, the social media world, it can be tough and difficult with comparison and things like that, but it also can lead to some really beautiful connections. And that's how I got connected with Steph, was through Instagram. And the reason why I'm so excited to have her as a resource for our community, but also to interview her today, is because I have a wide range of clients and friends that have utilized her services, and they are very different parents. Their approach to parenting are vastly different. And I think what speaks volumes, and what I'm really excited to kind of get into the nitty gritty, is that sleep coaching, having a sleep consultant in your corner and guiding you through, not only is important, but can fit within everybody's lifestyle and desires. And I think sometimes it gets a bad rap of like, oh, if you sleep, like, it's just, everything in life is so drastic, right? I just feel like people either look at sleep coaches and they're like, oh my gosh, the only method is cry it out, and you're like a terrible mom and you leave your kid in the crib crying for hours to sleep train, or you co-sleep till they're 12. Like, and I just can relate to that in birth, because you're either like birthing in the woods with deer, or you're in an OR. And I'm like, there's no one in between.
Yes. And I joke that I am a more of a silky mom, but that I'm like the crunchy mom sleep consultant, because I've had clients who parent just the way I do, and I also have had the self-proclaimed, I'm not calling them that, they call themselves the crunchy moms. Yes. And I can help both, because I'm not trying to tell them to do things my way. I'm finding out what their goals are, and I'm helping them. I'll tell them, like, okay, that's probably not achievable, or maybe I'm not the right fit for that, if it's not the right fit. But for the most part, we can make things work the way they want it to work. Yeah.
I absolutely love it. Okay. So you kind of went into a little bit of detail that your background's in the fitness industry. You felt this passion. And what's interesting too with your story is it was actually with your singleton. My experience was definitely with my twins and not getting sleep. But
sure.
So it was based off of that experience that really drove you to this line of work, right?
Yeah, so I just went through it with my firstborn. I was the mom who I love birth stories, so I love that you do those. But all I did was listen to birth stories. I was so focused on the birth and pregnancy itself, and like the delivery, and I never gave a thought to like even what my philosophies were about sleep. Like, I didn't think about any of that. I just thought it would come naturally. I just thought, oh, we just figured it out, and then I did not.
Right.
And it was awful. Like it like just literally ruined my whole life, like my whole maternity leave. And then I went back to work, at 12 weeks, like a lot of people do.
Yeah.
And I would just be going to work, like literally having not slept, and just being like, how am I supposed to be doing this? And my marriage, it was horrible. It's awful. Yeah. So I finally hired a sleep consultant.
I say often to clients when, because as doulas, we we do prepare a lot postpartum, even as birth doulas. And then, of course, we have postpartum doulas as well. But I always say there's a reason why they use sleep deprivation as like a torture mechanism.
Yeah, it is torture. Yeah.
Yeah. Yes.
Yeah, I
Okay.
remember
So,
like, oh yeah, I knew my baby was gonna wake up at night. Like obviously I understood that, but then like when he'd be awake for like 2 or 3 hours and I'm just sitting here thinking like looking at the clock, panicking about how I'm supposed to like be a functioning human being the next day.
right.
Um
Doesn't work.
yeah, so no. And so sleep consulting is such a relatively new industry, probably like maybe like a decade. Even like that was 5.5 years ago now. So it was not like a super well-known thing, but yeah, my sister like would send me someone she found on Instagram, and then I ended up following her, and then I ended up hiring the sleep consultant, and it was like life changing. So at the time, I wasn't like, oh, I'm going to be a sleep consultant, but it definitely like planted a seed. You know, I was
Yeah.
still very much in my current career, but like clearly down the road when things changed, and I found out I was having twins, which was like a shock. I was scared. Like I was like genuinely terrified. Like, okay, I was feeling so confident that when I was pregnant with what I thought was just my second
Right.
child, not my second and third. But I was like, okay, this is going to be so different. I'm going to have such a different experience. I'm so ready for this.
Right.
And then I found out it was twins, and I was like, no,
Whole different
like,
ballgame.
yeah, like, why can't I ever just get an easy, you know? So, but then I'm like, I was like, I have to be prepared for this. Like, I can't go through that again, especially times two. And so,
Right.
you know, just that's part of what led me to like, I'm just, instead of just getting a sleep consultant, I'm going to become the sleep consultant.
I
So
love
I
it.
can, yeah. And I was like, my twins, like having two newborns was easier for me than having my first. Like
Yeah.
I was confident, I knew what I was doing. And like, that's kind of what I want to do for other moms. Like, I don't want having a baby and parenthood to be scary. And I especially don't want people to reconsider like their family planning because of sleep, which happens. Like people will be like, oh man, I thought I wanted, you know, 3 kids, but after this first time around, like, I don't even know if I could do it again, you know, that kind of thing.
That's such a good point. I had not thought
Yeah.
about that, but absolutely that
Well,
can
that's what we
change.
went through. Yeah. Like
Yeah.
that's why my oldest is 4 years older than my twins, because we literally went back and forth about just having one, but that had never really been our intention, but we were so scarred by the
Yeah.
first time around. Yeah.
Yeah, that's such a
So
great point. Okay, so I want you to talk with our listeners about the services that you provide. So we will have in the note section all of the ways that you can connect with Steph because obviously working with her is a whole different ball game in terms of it being customizable and individualized. But I do encourage you to follow her because she shares some really great tips and talks about a lot of really great topics surrounding sleep, not only on her website through her blog, but just like reels on Instagram. So for sure, you need to start following her right now. But if a family is interested and they know they need some help in the sleep department, what services do you offer and how do people kind of start that relationship with you?
yep. Well, it's all virtual, which some people don't realize that like we do it all virtual. So I help
Yeah.
families like in different countries, all across the US, everywhere.
Yeah.
I want to have like a map in my office and put like a little pin on all the different
Yes, you should. That would be really cool. Because I have a
yeah.
book and I have all my doula babies' names
Yeah.
in the book. And so it's just a way to kind of look back and go like, wow, look at all that, you know?
Right. Yeah, because at this point I'm like at like 250-ish, somewhere in there. I haven't kept the latest count, but that's about how many families I've worked with, and they've been everywhere. So it's done virtually.
Yeah.
But we're still somehow able, that's what I love about, you know, the internet. I still feel very connected to the moms and the families I'm supporting. I
Yeah.
say moms because mostly I'm talking to the mom, but we do the consults and stuff is with the mom and the dad usually.
Okay.
But yeah, so what I do is I offer full support sleep coaching, I call it. So I used to kind of, you know, dabble with limited support packages, this and that, just for different price ranges. And then I just kind of found that families need the full support, you know, like
Yeah.
when they're struggling with sleep, they're emotional, they're exhausted. And part of what I do is not just the expertise, but it's to be a support system for them, you know, and to give them accountability. So I realized like, I don't want to offer anyone limited support. I want to offer them full support. And I found that's what people need. So that's all I offer. And what that
And
means
that's really probably where you see the
the best
the
results.
best outcome.
Yes, absolutely. And that's what I kind of learned pretty quick. And so I was like, I don't want people picking a package because of budget constraints. I want them to just pick what they really need.
Yeah.
So I offer full support depending on the child's age. So does baby or toddler. It's really just like, how old's my child? that's the package for me. Less decision making for
I
tired
love that.
parents, you know?
Yeah.
Yeah, so that's kind of what I've come to, and I really like that little shift I've made. And then what that means, though, full support means that for 2 to 3 weeks, I am just like every single day. I'm like, it's a high touch service. Like I'm checking in with these families every single day. I do have some parameters on the weekends because for like work-life balance, but it's not hard to check in with families, you know, in the morning, even on Saturdays and Sundays.
Right.
And so they can reach out to me anytime. They get a personalized sleep plan that I write for them, using my methods, but also like, you know, incorporating their family dynamics and their preferences and all these different things for their personalized sleep plan. And then we go through that together on Zoom, just like we're doing here. And then I have an app that I use. And so they're on the app and they log everything, and I'm checking in multiple times a day, you know, during the week, once a day on the weekend. And so we're just talking for like 2 to 3 weeks until they reach their goals. And I never like, time's up, we're done. Like I get them to their goals, but it's usually a 2 to 3 week process. Yep.
Okay. And that's great too, because I know, just looking back with the twins and trying to optimize sleep, like every night's a little bit different. And it's so nice, I'm sure, for families to be able to bounce things off of you to say like, what do you think was different last night? Like things have been going well for 3 nights. And then last night, I feel like, you know, something changed. And just to be able to have your insight and your expert opinion of even asking questions like, did you do this or did you do that? Because when we are so sleep deprived and we're in it, our head is down and we're not necessarily seeing things as clear. And it's really interesting because obviously we do very different things, but I feel like they're very similar. A lot of people asked me when I was pregnant with the twins, like, well, you've been a doula for years. Are you going to hire a doula for this birth? And I'm like, yeah, I can't doula myself. And it's the same with postpartum. Like I look back and I'm like, gosh, I can't believe I didn't think about that. Like I'll say to my clients, oh, have you considered this? I'm like, why didn't I think about that for myself? But it's different when you're in it. And so I'm sure there are many conversations that you have with your clients where you're like, hey, have you considered or thought about this? And they're like, oh, I should have thought about that, but you don't.
Yeah, like I'm an objective person, so I can come into their situation without emotions. I have empathy as a mother, but not my personal emotions aren't tied into their situation. So I can be more objective and then help them see things like from a zoomed out perspective. And they're like, okay, yes, that makes sense. But they would not have come up with that on their own. Yeah.
Okay, you guys, we're going to take just a brief break so I can tell you all about an amazing company, Body Ready Method. Body Ready Method is an amazing company that offers pregnancy and postpartum programs. I urge you to take a look at this, especially if you are wanting to stay active during your pregnancy and prepare for labor and delivery. This is also a great program to help heal and recover your body post-birth. You can go to howtomom.com/links and follow the Body Ready Method link from there. Okay, back to today's episode. Absolutely. Can you tell me a little bit about kind of the training behind? I know just reading your website, you are great at consuming information constantly. Like you're much like me, like want to always be learning, always staying up with evidence-based information. But the training itself to become a sleep consultant, what did that look like?
Yep. And I do think it's important that people know that sleep consultants aren't just like self-taught. I'm not just like, this is what worked for my kids.
Right.
It's like, I have the personal experience as a mother, but then I have an actual certification. Yeah. And it's evidence-based. And so what I did was I attended a training. There's a few different like certifications you can get. You know, I did my research and I picked one. I'm Sleep Sense certified.
Okay.
So when I was on maternity leave, that was in 2021. So everything was, you know, COVID times. It was all, online. It used to be like an in-person conference, but I did it all online. But like for 2 days, I was just like, it was like too long, like a full weekend of just like learning. And even before that, there was like books I had to read, you know. So I've read all the baby sleep books because I want to know if a family tells me like, oh, we tried this, whatever, then I know what they're talking about and I have the context for that. And then after I completed my training, I had to get volunteer clients. So I started my Instagram page and I just put out there like, I did charge a small price because I find that people need to have a little bit of skin in the game when you're asking them to do something. But very, very discounted services. And then I worked with those families and then I was like evaluated by like my mentors in the Sleep Sense, you know, certification. They've looked at my sleep plans. They got feedback from the clients who worked with me. And then it was a 3-month process of like volunteer families. And then I got certified. So it was like a 3-month process from start to finish. It wasn't just like one weekend. It's like, then I learned it, then I had to apply it and then be reviewed on that. So,
yeah, absolutely.
yes.
That's amazing. So I can imagine, much like being a doula, and like you talked about, for the most part, regardless of a parenting style or how they approach sleep, you're really kind of able to make their plans individualized. However, you want it to feel like a good fit for both the family and for, I'm sure, yourself as a professional. Do you offer like free interviews or consults for people to sit down and ask the questions that they might have?
Yep. So that's a big part of what I do. I call them free sleep chats, and it's a 15-minute call. And it's not meant to be like a 15 minutes of free advice. It's meant to be like to learn more about like my philosophy and if we're a good fit. Because if, for instance, the family wants to co-sleep, that's fine, but we wouldn't be a good fit. So, because what I do is I help families who want independent sleep for their child. So the analogy I use is like, because of my background in the fitness industry, it works, but it's a good analogy. It's like a personal trainer. Like if you wanted to, get a beach body, you go to the gym and you hire a trainer, they're going to be like, this is what you need to do to get this. And if you're like, well, I don't want to do that. I don't like the feeling of my muscles burning. I don't want to like to sweat either. They're like, that's fine. You don't need to have a beach body. You don't need to have an independent sleeper. But if you do want that, this is what it takes. And so on those 15-minute free sleep chats, I can kind of identify like, what are their goals? Do they understand the process? And are they willing to go through that process to get the results, because the results are life-changing, but it's going to take some work to get there. Yeah.
Right. Absolutely. Yep. And what do you say to families when they sit down with you and they say, and correct me if I'm wrong, but I would assume that a big question is, I want to sleep train, but I don't want to do the cry it out method.
Yes. I'm glad you brought
that
that
a
up.
question you get?
Oh, crying is the number one thing. That's usually, I have to say at some point in that call, like, okay, let's talk about crying. Because I need to know, like, when they say cried out, so people throw out terms like cried out and gentle sleep training. Like these are not like real terms. Like you hear about them all the time on social media and people use them, but like there's not like a real definition for them, or like what they mean is different than what I mean. So the first thing I'll do is like, when you say you don't want cried out, like what do you mean by that? Yeah. Like, do you mean that like you don't want your child to cry for even 1 second? Like, or do you mean, like, to me, cried out is like the extinction method. Like put your baby in their crib, leave the room, don't come back till 7 a.m., which obviously, I don't do that. But that's what I think of cried out as, but I know that's not what they mean. What they mean is they might mean they don't want any crying. So I had to make sure we understand these terms. Yep. Yeah. And same for like gentle sleep training. Sometimes when people say gentle, what they mean, they might mean they want to be in the room with their child. And I do have a method that you can be in the room with them, but I also have to make sure they understand that gentle doesn't necessarily mean less crying. So I kind of gentle for parent involved. Like how involved as a parent do you want to be? Because we can talk about that. We can talk about the level of involvement, how much in the room, type of way you're responding. And that is going to be the difference. But gentle doesn't always mean less crying. Yeah. And I just think parents just getting those terms out there and talking about it is an important thing, because people throw those terms around everywhere and it's not very helpful.
And probably they don't even necessarily know what that means, right? Yeah. They just hear it and they hear like horror stories or like one story and they're like, I don't want that, but they don't even necessarily know what that is, because every individual is so different. And obviously family dynamics are so different. A question that I have is, at what age would you start? Well, I guess I should back up. How many different methods do you teach? And at what age is it appropriate to start with one of those methods?
Yep. So like in the whole like world of sleep training, and some people don't like that word, so like I'll call it sleep coaching or sleep guidance. Like you're guiding your child to learn something, right? So some people don't like the word train. You're teaching them. That's what we do as parents, right? So we're teaching them how to sleep. So there's only like 4 different methods like in the world. There's like the extinction method, which I just talked about, which obviously a sleep consultant's not going to teach you that. But then there's like leave and check is one of my methods. And that's like it sounds. It involves leaving for periods of time, leaving the room and coming back. And the length of the time you're out of the room can vary. I vary it based on the parent's comfort level. I kind of have a range where I tell them it needs to be in this range to be effective. But like if you want to be more towards this end of the range, because that's where your comfort level is, that's fine. We tailor it to the parent. And then I teach them like what do you do when you go in the room? Like, how are you responding? And a big part of that too is how does your child respond? Because every child's different. You know, some get more upset when you're like standing over the crib, talking to them, just like, why aren't you picking me up? Where another child might be comforted by that. So it's not just the parent's comfort level. It's like, let's see what your child is telling us about what they need. So that's a leave and check method. And I also have a stay in the room method, which you stay in the room. So again, that's the more parent involved method, but I don't use the word gentle. It just depends. In general, I use the in the room method more for toddlers and the leave and check more for infants, but that's not, completely black and white, but it's generally where it goes. And as far as age, I do 5 months as my minimum age. One of the big reasons for that, I mean, obviously you don't sleep train with newborns, but then there's that 4-month regression, which there's so many sleep regressions, but the 4-month one is the real one, the one real one that your baby will go through because they're changing their sleep, like the way they, their sleep turns into like adult sleep, the 4 stages of sleep, whereas a newborn only has 2. So at some point between like 3.5 and 4.5 months, they're going to go through that change, which can cause a regression. And what I don't want is to work with the family, get their child sleeping well, and then they hit the 4-month regression and it feels like it's all undone. So 5 months is like, let's make sure we're on the other side of that. And then we know that once we lay these foundations, they're not going to be like, uprooted in a couple of weeks when they go through this regression. So
oh, that's so smart. And I can imagine there are clients that you have that you work with during the infant stage that you may work with again in the toddler stage, right? Because there's so many different factors that come with that.
Yeah. And like I have a newborn guide, and I even will work with families when they have like 3 or 4 month olds. We're not doing sleep training, but I'm helping them lay foundations so that sleep training doesn't have to feel like this big ripping the Band-Aid off type thing. Like I sleep trained my own kids, but it wasn't like this big event. It was like we were always working our way towards that, like with my twins especially, and so it was just not really a big deal. So I help people even before they get to the point of sleep training. But then if they want to sleep train, infant sleep training and toddler sleep training look very, very different.
I bet.
Very. Toddler is more behavioral. It's all behavioral, and it's a lot of parents needing to learn about boundary setting and all of these things. So I actually really, really love working with toddlers. A lot of sleep consultants are like, oh, stay away from that. But I've actually, I like it more. I do both.
I feel like you could also have the title of like a parenting coach.
Yes, it's a little bit like that. I feel like I don't want to call myself that because then I feel like, oh, I'm not a perfect parent. But when it comes to sleep specifically, I know, but right, the pressure.
Teachers at school aren't perfect people.
Right. But like the pressure of being like, I'm a parenting coach. I'm like, I can tell you how to parent around bedtime.
Yes.
Yeah, it does feel kind of like a parenting boot camp. Like, that's really what most parents are struggling with. For sure. Setting boundaries. And I kind of give them the permission, like, no, actually, like, you can set boundaries and they're allowed to not like them. Like, that's okay. Whereas I think parents kind of, and it doesn't even matter if they're first time parents, they don't like to see their child upset. No one likes to see their child upset, but sometimes that's part of, the process. Right. And they get to the other side of it. I always explain to them, like, you have to take the lead and you're going to make a change, usually because it's clearly not manageable what you're doing. So a lot of times parents their whole evening is lost to their toddler's bedtime. And so when they decide to make a change, their toddler they weren't a part of that decision. So they're going to be upset at first, but as long as you lead confidently, they will then understand what's happening, and then they will learn to accept the change, and they end up thriving with the boundaries. But it's a process. It doesn't happen overnight. So
absolutely. And I feel like too, that can lead into so many other boundaries for that parent just on a day-to-day basis. And I feel like maybe what's helpful for like a type A personality is like, we're given direction, we have a goal, we are working actively on something. Again, we're given permission to follow these steps that are professionally given from an expert, that in itself might feel a little bit more attainable than just to like be like, okay, this time I'm following through. Yeah.
Well, when I talk to parents, like, you don't just hire a sleep consultant the first time you've had a rough night of sleep. Like, they've all tried stuff. They've tried this, they've tried that, and they tell me what they've tried. And they're calling me because it's not working. And that's partly because they might not be, they tried something, but they didn't really know, like, if am I doing this right? Like, how do I know if I'm doing it right? Is it still supposed to be hard on night 5? And so then they end up quitting. Like, that's the number one mistake they make, is they're not confident in their plan, and so they quit too early. And a lot of times with, husbands and wives, especially if it's that dynamic, it's like my way or his way, you know, or her way. It's like, no, let's just go with an objective, you know, you hire a sleep consultant. Now this is the sleep plan that we're both, you know, following, and it's not your way or my way. It's, we both agreed on this. And that is the biggest game changer for parents by far.
Yeah. And you're taking the questioning out of it so that a parent's not going, oh my gosh, is this working? Am I doing this right? You're following the advice from a trained professional. And so that in itself, I feel like would be enough encouragement to kind of stay on course.
Yeah. And I can tell them what to expect, you know, and based on, and all the families I worked with gives me more. Every time I work with a family, I learn more, you know, and so I can be like, you know, you could probably expect this. This would be normal if this was happening, but this could also be normal. Like there's all these ranges of normal. And I tend to set parents up for a little bit of, I want them to maybe be pleasantly surprised.
Yeah.
So I'll be like, it could be this hard. And then if it doesn't happen, they're like, oh, yes. But if it does happen, they're like, she told us this was going to happen. It's fine. I keep going. So I try to really, really let parents be prepared and go into it like eyes wide open, so they're not surprised by anything.
Yeah, I love that. So I know we briefly talked about your services, but to go a little bit deeper. So say somebody sets up the 15-minute call, they feel like it's a great fit. You guys are aligned on philosophy behind sleep, and they want to move forward with working with you. Can you go into a little bit more detail? I know that you had mentioned obviously the app and the check-ins and kind of that full touch relationship, but what does that look like in terms of price, contract, kind of how do they move on?
Yep. So let's say free sleep chat's always the first step. A lot of people will be like, oh, there's no buy now button on your website. And like, that's intentional because I don't want someone to click buy now and then realize that we're not a good fit.
Yes.
So we always have to talk first. The first step is always that free sleep chat. And then sometimes on the phone right then they're like, no, I'm ready. Let's do it. And I'm like, great. Sometimes it's like, oh, I need to, it's an investment. So I'll talk about the prices in a second. So they need to usually talk to their spouse or that's usually the case. But either way, once they decide they're ready to move forward, then I send them a coaching agreement. So, you know, just laying out, you know, what they're getting and what, you know, what to expect, that this isn't medical advice and all of that type of stuff. Right. So they sign the agreement and then I send them a sleep questionnaire. So that's it's a Google form. This is a big part of the process because this is where I find out everything, their family dynamics, their schedule. Like, do they go to daycare? Do grandma and grandpa watch the children? Are they a stay-at-home parent? Like all these different things factor into things. Like, is there an older sibling and you have to do pickup at 2:30, you know, so I need to keep that in mind when I'm writing the schedule. So I get all this information.
Look at their life.
Yes. So that's why the plans are not just cookie cutter.
Yes.
So I find out all these things and then what's going on with the sleep, of course, like I find out what's happening, what the problem is, their schedules, all of that. And that's what I use. Those responses is how I write the sleep plan for them. So once they fill out that questionnaire, then that's where it takes me like usually about a week, depending on how busy I am, but that's about the timeline to get their sleep plan ready. And then that's when we then get together over Zoom to go through it. Okay. As far as pricing, my prices are, those two packages, Bedrocks Baby and Bedrocks Toddler is what I call them. And $425 is the baby level and $525 is the toddler level. So it's an investment, but when you think about what it is, like you said in the beginning of this conversation, it's sleep. It's like what we spend like half of our lives doing. It's so important. So yeah.
And just how, like, it's not just on the surface of sleep, like how many other things are affected based off of how you're sleeping, not only for your child and like, how's their behavior during the day? Is your schedule wrapped around when they fall asleep, or how are you performing at work? Like everything is connected. So it's not just sleep, which
your whole life,
which is your whole life. It's your everyday. Okay, that's amazing. And so I think what's important for our listeners to hear, you already said this, but I want to make sure that they hear this, that when they decide to hire you and they work with you, you are getting them to their goal or their goals. So it's not like, here's the information, it's all on paper and good luck. I hope it works for you, which I think is very unique to your business and your business model, and so important for parents to know this.
Yeah, the plan is very dynamic. Like they get the plan and is personalized, but even then it's like, but we're still gonna be talking every single day while you implement this plan. So we will troubleshoot. We will shift things. If your child is showing us they need something different, we adjust. Like, I have edited sleep plans during the process and resent them because I still want them to ultimately have that written plan.
Right.
To go back to. But yeah, it's a very dynamic process. And I do have, like, if you're on my website, you'll see the baby package is 2 weeks, the toddler package is 3 weeks, but it's always until we reach your goal. And that's just the timeline that it usually is. And that's probably true 95% of the time.
Yes.
But sometimes, teething or sickness or anything that comes up, we just pause and then we regroup when they're ready to restart. The goal is always to get them to the results they want. And that's when we wrap up. And when we wrap up, I send them information for the future because sleep training, it's not like this permanent thing. It's a lot of like you're learning. I'm trying to teach parents to be like problem solvers, like for the long term, so that they don't get their child sleeping well and then be like, oh gosh, I hope a regression doesn't happen. It's like regressions will happen. You're going to travel. They're going to get sick, some developmental milestone. But I want to empower parents like this, but this is how you're going to handle it. Like it's not going to ruin everything just because, a little blip comes up. So I send them
have this foundation. The foundation is there. And so just like with anything in life, you can always go back to that foundation.
Exactly.
I think that's huge. I just want people to know that if you do reach out to Steph and you work with her, you're not just getting a plan and you walk away, because I think implementing is probably one of the biggest parts of, sleep coaching, sleep training, whatever you want to call it, but working to get to a place where your family members are getting more sleep. So instead of just like the sweeping statement of people are coming to you, obviously, because they are trying to have more sleep in their household. What though, within that, what would you say are the parents' biggest complaints when they come to you? Like, what do you hear the most when parents come to you? Because I think this will help other parents not feel alone.
Yeah, I have two answers for that because one's more baby and one's more toddler. It's very different. With the babies, it's what I went through when I was that first time mom. It's just they're waking up every 1 to 2 hours all night long, and these parents, like, they are just so sleep deprived they can't function, and they literally feel like I can't do this for one more night. Those are the ones who usually commit on the phone, like, how soon can we start?
Yeah,
they are desperate. Yeah. And so that, I have, like, my heart just hurts for those moms, and I will be like, let's go, let's get this started.
I know how in need you are.
Yes. Because I can tell, like, I've had, moms cry to me on the phone, which is fine. Like I get where they're at. They're just kind of broken, honestly. And I love seeing, like, their personality literally change while we work together, because who you are when you're sleep deprived is not who you really are. You're in survival mode. You are not getting a basic need met, so they just, like, change. They become, like, a more joyful person once they're getting sleep. So that's kind of where the baby parents tend to come to me from that perspective. And with toddler parents, it's different. They're usually sleeping, like, once a toddler falls asleep, for the most part, they're asleep for the night, but it's the bedtime that is just, they have no eating routine. They're talking about how, like, I never get to spend any time with my husband anymore. I can't get anything done. Or maybe they own a business. Like, they need to work in the evenings. Like, I've been there. Like, it's not, they can't just lay with their toddler, all night long. And another big pain point that toddler parents come to me with is that they're getting frustrated and angry with their child, and bedtime turns into lashing out and frustration. They hate that. But that's what happens after an hour and a half of these bedtime battles. They're not trying to be that kind of parent, but they're just so frustrated. They're at the end of the rope, and it's the end of the day. We don't have a lot of left, and they hate that that's how their child is going to bed every night, and how they go to bed. Then moms, we lay there thinking, like, you replay the day, and I hate how that interaction went. And so that's a big one, and they just want it to be peaceful again and to be, like, loving and to look forward to bedtime. So that's kind of the other end of the spectrum.
Hey guys, it's Stephanie Sinclair, founder and owner of How To Mom. I'm just interrupting today's episode to make sure you are well aware of all that How To Mom offers. We, of course, are a community and a support group for all moms at all stages of life, but we also offer a large variety of services that I wanted to make sure you are well aware of. We offer birth doula services, both in person or online support. We have birth support groups with different birth packages to choose from. We also provide placenta encapsulation services, lactation services from our lactation counselors. We also offer postpartum services, birth planning assistance, belly casting. We have a registered dietitian, nutritionist. We also offer a variety of photography services from birth, newborn, and family packages. We truly have it all here at How to Mom. So please don't hesitate to reach out today to have a free consult and help us find the best way to support you in your pregnancy, birth, and postpartum journey. Now back to today's episode. I was just going to say that kind of as you were talking, like at the end of the day, we're tired. Our patience is pretty small at that point. We're looking forward to getting some sleep ourselves. And yes, when you are frustrated and you feel like it's become a game and you're just like, go to bed, you are not the parent that you want to be or you desire to be or you've worked so hard all day to be. And yeah, it's just a crummy feeling to feel like, oh, we had such a good day and now the day had
ended.
Yeah. Oh, that's such a big one. I also want to say too that I saw on your website that I think is really interesting. Also a really great approach is kind of in society. We've kind of come to this saying of like survival mode, right? Like I'm just in survival mode. I mean, I have said that many of times, right? However, I like your approach of that you don't really like survival mode. You don't really like life should not be this constant fight or flight.
Right. It's not meant to be a permanent state, you know? Like that's why we can get through the newborn stage, right? Because, you know, our body like prepares us for a short term of not getting the sleep we need, but it's not meant to go on for months and years. And I think that's what holds a lot of parents back from getting help. They just keep telling themselves it'll get better on its own. And it doesn't. And then you end up living for 5 years in survival mode when you really didn't need to be, you know?
Yeah, it's so true. I know. And I think where I can speak to that in terms of what sleep deprivation can do to us. I always, and I just wish I would have thought through that with the twins. I had such my first just really took to sleep really well. And it was very short term that we struggled with sleep. And then she just was a baby who slept through the night, like pretty early on. And so I think I overlooked the preparation with twins. I was for sure scared. Like I cried when I found out we were having twins, not because I wasn't grateful. I know I don't need to explain this to Steph, but it was a very overwhelming feeling and I was frightened and I didn't know how I was going to do it. But I wish I would have invested and thought a little bit more about sleep and how that was going to look for our family because it was survival. And I remember my husband coming home from work one day and he's a super laid back person, kind of like go with the flow. Maybe not as much now with, you know, being a dad of 3, but he used to be. And I remember he looked at me and he was like, this is crazy. And I was almost grateful that he said that because I was thinking, why is this so hard? Like, why am I feeling like this is insane and this like survival mode that we're in? And for him to say that, I was like, okay, it's not just me. Like, this is really crazy. This is really, really hard. And my twins did not sleep through the night. I think they were like 1.5 years. I mean, I just wish I could go back and hire you because it would have been the best investment.
Right.
But I will tell people now, looking back, I always had a really great memory. Like I remember talking to my girlfriends from high school and I'm like, how do you remember that? Oh my gosh, remember when we did, you know, this or went here or did that? And they're like, no, I don't remember. And I'm like, really? I always prided myself on having this really good memory. That sleep deprivation for that 1.5 years, I do not have a good memory anymore. There are things that Brian will say and I'm like, what? And he's like, how do you not remember that? And I'm like literally it does not exist in my mind. Isn't that crazy?
Because you probably really didn't remember it. Yeah. Because your brain was not functioning right. That is crazy.
I say the twins took my memory.
They did. Maybe they have more memories about the first 1.5 years than you do.
I should actually tag you on a post. One of them woke up in the middle of the night and I'm pretty sure, I can't remember how old they were. I mean, they were still pretty young, but I nursed one of them and only one woke up. So I only nursed the one and I went to put who I thought was Deacon back into his crib. So I got him all settled, nursed him, burped him, put him in his crib, went to go leave the room, and they both started crying. And I'm like, what in the world? So I turn on the light a little bit. I put Brinley on top of Deacon. I didn't even know what twin I had nursed.
Right.
And like,
You're so tired.
I know. And like, thank God they were fine. Like everybody was fine. But I'm just like, that morning, I was like, it's bad. It's bad.
Yeah. But the thing is, I just did 2 reels about this because everything you're describing, like you can see how it's affecting you and like, oh my gosh, like I can't remember anything. I don't know why I came in this room. I just put my baby on top of my other baby. But even that for most moms is a lot of times it's not enough to make them get help or make a change because we're so like sacrificial as moms, which is what we're so amazing for that. We're so strong. We will endure like anything for our kids, right? But like you don't need to endure that because it's also good for your babies to sleep well. You know what I mean? Like we wouldn't give our babies junk food or toddlers junk food every day. You know, but we would raise them on junk sleep. Like we don't want to do that either. So I always try to tell parents, like if your own, like all the things that's happening to your body because you're not sleeping, if that's not motivation enough for you, let's talk about your child, like, and how much happier they'll be when they're sleeping through the night, consolidated.
It's a vital part of life.
Yeah.
You know,
and people notice the mood change in their kids and like, oh my gosh, they're so much more pleasant and happy and like I didn't know. Yeah,
and you get to enjoy it. And 2 thoughts on that, and not at all to give a plug to doulas, but I'm going to because I think what is so important because of that, what you just mentioned, and like, you know, I just am going to endure and I have to get through as a mom. Why I love networking so much, why I love interviewing experts like yourself, why I love learning about professions and experts like yourself is because more often than not, we are so much better with taking advice from somebody we love and trust and who we know has our best interest versus going, okay, I'm going to call the sleep consultant. And so not that that doesn't happen, but I, like most doulas, we are kind of that first go-to with families. I mean, I'm lucky enough that I will say almost all, if not all of my clients are now, you know, friends. Like I'm still a part of their lives. And whether it be their infant or their toddler, if they are struggling, more often than not, they're reaching out or making a comment to me like, oh my gosh, we can't get our baby to sleep or we're struggling. And I know because of the love and the trust that they have put in me, that if I were to say, I have the sleep consultant that I have referred to a number of times, and she is incredible and it's customizable and she will take good care of you, and I have no concerns about referring you to her, 9 times out of 10, they're not even thinking, should we? They are just calling. And that's why I feel like as a doula, we need to be networking. We need to be meeting all of these other professionals that not only can educate us so that we can better provide advice, but so that we have people to say, you know, to refer them to, because we are oftentimes the first ones they reach out to. So I just really appreciate you kind of sharing information, not only on social media, but doing this interview, because I think a lot of people are going to learn a lot from this, but I also think they're going to also somehow walk away with permission that like, it is okay to get help.
Yeah, it's like, why do you think that because you had a baby, you should suddenly be an expert on all things baby sleep? Like, no one's, or toddler sleep. Yeah, because when people have their second babies, is a lot of times when I hear from them, because
100%.
what was working until they have a newborn.
Things are changing. And okay, this is this just kind of hit me, and this is why I love being on podcasts and talking, because it's through normal conversations that we can kind of think through things. But oftentimes we hear it takes a village, right? Like that's just a comment. Oh, it takes a village. And I remember being like, you know, it's that
where's my village?
The twin moms looking out the window, or she's like me waiting on my village and she's a skeleton, you know. Here is what we are claiming today. And Steph, you tell our listeners if you don't agree, but hopefully you do.
Okay.
We are your village.
Yes.
It's not that you cannot lean on family, but sometimes family doesn't show up. And more importantly, your family is not an expert.
Yep.
Your
And
family doesn't have training in birth and in sleep. You deserve
yeah,
a village of experts.
yeah, your village can be partly hired. Like I think we think our village
Yeah.
has to be just family, neighbors, friends. It has to be free. It's like you have some of that, but you can hire your village.
Oh my
You can
gosh,
hire that.
I love that. Your
Yes.
village can be partly hired. I mean, I just
Yes.
think we need to change that. 20, 30, 40 years ago, yes, it may have looked where it's like your aunts and your mom and
Yeah.
grandmother, everybody's around you. Life is different now. First of
Mhm.
all, a lot of women have careers. A lot of women are working out of the home. My mom wasn't retired when I had my kids. Like,
Mhm.
your village can look different, and some of your village can be hired help. Like, that's the thing.
Yeah.
Oh,
Yeah. I remember with the twins, I was surprised. I thought I'd get like more help from my in-laws. I don't know why, just because they live nearby, but
yeah,
they're not retired. They're
yeah,
busy. So I remember thinking like, oh God, like where are you guys? We have twins here.
I
But
know.
I hired a nanny because I'm like, I need help.
Yeah.
So that's what you gotta do.
Oh, yeah. I just think that was just, I don't know why, that was just a big light bulb that went off. And two kind of unfortunate scenarios as a twin mom who did not hire a sleep consultant. Um, they sound, and it's a little bit depressing, but the best way I can describe that first year and a half after having the twins, and it's just like heart-wrenching now when I look back. But the best way I can describe it, Steph, is I was in the deep end of a pool and I could barely breathe. And every once in a while, somebody would throw me a life jacket and I would come up for a little bit of air, but
Mhm.
nobody could take me out of the damn pool.
No. So you
No,
just sit there. Yeah.
nobody. And I just wanted to get out of the pool and nobody could take me out of the pool. Like, that was the
Mm.
best way. And of course that comes with some postpartum anxiety, and
Yeah.
that's my individual story, but that was the
Yeah.
best analogy I could give. And I remember, um, sleep training my
Mhm.
twins at 6 months, not with a coach. That would have been very helpful. We wouldn't have gone a whole year and a half without sleep. So, as you can tell,
Yep.
it was not successful. But I remember being a vulnerable mom and posting about it because I have a platform at How to Mom, and I will share all things motherhood. It is not just the good. I share all things.
Yep.
And I had made a comment or said something about, I had gotten to a point where it was no longer good for my babies for us
Mhm.
to not get sleep. And so we were moving forward with sleep training. And and I'm so pissed to even admit this, but it was a fellow doula, who kind of ate me alive.
Yeah,
And
I'm kind of flinching knowing what you're gonna say, probably. Go ahead.
yeah, and made me, I mean, it kind of made my mama bear come out. I also had my doula from my first stick up and say, like, first of all, you don't know what you're talking about. She's a twin mom. Like, first of all, it's different. Second of all, how dare you? This mom is being so vulnerable and so real and so honest. And the way it wasn't coming from love, it was coming from this place of like, oh my gosh, I feel so bad for your babies. Like, how could you? Oh,
Yeah. Oh, the sleep training shamers and haters are alive and well.
people
But
need you. Like, they need you not only for the advice, but they need you to encourage and to remind them of all of the good that comes from sleep, and that you're not depriving your child and making them feel like they're calling for help and you're not showing up. Like, that was heart-wrenching to hear.
that's the biggest myth that's all over Instagram, is that what sleep training does is teach them not to signal for you, which is a completely false statement. Like your children will definitely still let you know when they need you, but they won't need you to go back to sleep. That's what it does.
Yeah.
If they're not feeling well, if they have a dirty anything, they will call for you. They will. Trust me. I know. I have 3 sleep trained children, and that's the biggest lie that's out there. But I tell parents all the time, like, get off Instagram. Stop following an account that makes you, my quote I always say is like, don't follow anyone who offers shame without offering help.
Oh,
Like, don't tell me why it's all wrong and why it's bad if you're not going to tell me what I'm supposed to do instead, because I can't do what I'm doing anymore. So, like, either give me a solution or stop shaming me. That's where we're at.
Exactly. And I think this just goes to say that like every family, every baby, every scenario is different. And this is why we don't just follow general advice on social media. We hire the experts who can give us individual care and support and guidance. So, Steph, thank you so much for being on today. I think this is going to be a very popular episode. Your wisdom, your approach, and I think in part kind of your mama bear side of like how you protect your children is also how you approach and protect your clients. And I love that. And I'm just excited to continue to learn more. And I want you all to know that you can reach out to Steph. All of her information will be below in the notes. You can follow her on Instagram. You can reach out to her through her website. But is there any last piece of advice or a goodbye you would love to give our listeners today?
Yeah, well, I would just say, like how you mentioned my Instagram, start there, because I have on my link in my bio, to what we were just talking about, I link to studies about the actual evidence about sleep training and attachment. And so you can tune out all those, post is not a study or it's not evidence. I link right to the research. It's not my opinion. So you can go to my Instagram and you can go read the research articles, like the truth about it. And then it also links to my website where you can book a free sleep chat, but that's like your homepage for everything. And on my website as well, I have free guides. Like I give lots of free advice too. So for solving early wakings, that's my most popular guide. And it's free to download. I have guides for room sharing siblings. I have guides for creating an ideal sleep environment. I have a newborn guide. I have all of that on my website as well. But you can get to all of it from my Instagram. Just come there. That's my community.
I love that. That's amazing. And I think that's a good point where you start. Like with anything, research is key. Knowledge is power. This is not Steph just out there selling a product. There is research behind it. And there are studies that show how sleep can improve all things in life, including motherhood. So Steph, thanks again for taking time to be with us today. We know you're very busy. And I just want to thank you all for listening.
Thank you so much.
All right, you guys, that is it for today's episode. I hope you enjoyed. If so, please subscribe to our podcast, comment, share, give us feedback. We'd love to hear from you. Thank you so much for taking time out of your day to listen, and we will see you next time.